Sam, first of all, man, thank you for just taking the time to do this, being transparent about
Yeah,
everything.
I've
Uh,
I've been watching your videos a long time, so
oh,
it's an honor to be here.
Thank you, man.
Yeah.
It's an honor for me. The loud and clear briefing was like enlightening for me
Okay.
because you dropped a lot of big stats and numbers. What were some of like your favorite stats for last year?
Yeah, so we just released our fifth Loud and Clear report. We do this every March, recaps all the Spotify royalty data from the year before. So tons of data from 2024 payouts. And the big story this year is it's been exactly 10 years from the low point of the global music industry.
Mm,
2014, after piracy, the internet, that was the low point, $13 billion in global music revenue that year. This year, we're exactly 10 years later. Spotify royalties have grown from 1 billion a year to 10 billion a year, which is
wow.
kind of wild. Global music industry is approaching 30 billion a year now. Um, so that's what's really exciting, like those big top line numbers. And it's not just a Spotify story, it's streaming, it's the entire industry overall.
Yeah.
And then on the site, we break that down at every level, like $1,000 a year, 10,000, 100,000, a million, 10 million, and all those numbers have tripled or more than tripled since 2017. Um, so that's why we're here. That's like why people work at Spotify to help see artists get paid at that level.
Yeah.
Um, so those are the highlights for me.
And where are y'all getting all these numbers from? Like, where do you aggregate this data from?
Yeah, we have um, basically it's all the data that we have, so our part of the equation.
Okay.
Um, as your viewers probably know, Spotify, all streaming services pay out an artist and songwriter's rights holder. So if that's an indie artist, maybe through a distributor, kind of goes to the distributor to the artist, could be through a label. So in Loud and Clear, we basically take all the data from our side of the equation. We try to be as transparent as possible. So all the numbers you see on the site, it's recording and publishing payout to rights holders. From there, the artist, the songwriter, uh, they know their deal terms and how much is making it to them. So that's why we talk about, royalties generated. How many artists are generating $1 million a year? If you're, DIY and have 100% of all your royalties, that's all going to the artist. In some cases, an artist might have a huge advance with a major label and they're recouping against that. They might have different splits. Um, that part of the industry remains a bit opaque.
Mm,
So we're trying to do our part. We have our data teams look at all the data of what we know, which is what we pay out. We have no idea what terms an artist is on. And that's all the data you see on the site.
right. Right. Okay. By the way, missed a big detail. I didn't introduce you.
Oh,
Can you just tell
we just jumped into
people?
it.
I know we jumped right into it. Tell people your name, your title, what you do here at Spotify.
Yeah, I jump into loud and clear too fast. I'm Sam Duboff, and I'm the global head of marketing and policy for our music business at Spotify. I've been here 6 years, a little over 6 years, and based out of New York.
Okay. Cool. Got that out of the way. So I wanted to ask you, music streaming is obviously way up in every sense of the word. More subscribers, more revenue, more payouts. Over, and you correct me if this is wrong, but over $10 billion to the music industry as a whole just from Spotify.
That's right.
Um, can you share how much of that is getting paid out to labels, signed artists
Yeah.
versus unsigned independent artists through distributor?
Yeah, I don't have the breakdown by signed versus unsigned. What
Okay.
we do break out is kind of indie so indie labels
Yep.
are included. And one of the big numbers we share is 50% of the 10 billion Spotify pays out goes to the indies. So
Wow.
that's indie label, indie distributor, DIY, um, all combined, 5 billion a year just from Spotify. Some of that's artist signed to indie labels,
Mm,
so they're not fully unsigned, but indie labels, tend to have more favorable splits for artists versus major label.
right.
Um, and so that 5 billion's going to artists who are going the indie path, whether that's an indie label, some kind of hybrid indie distributor
Mhm.
or fully DIY through DistroKid, CD Baby, TuneCore, whatever it may be,
Yeah.
which is really exciting to see. The kind of other data point we shared on indie performance is there was a big study done this fall by a third-party research group called Medea. They basically interviewed and surveyed the entire ecosystem of indie labels, indie distributors, and some indie artists as well,
Mhm.
and asked them for their kind of royalty data. And they found Spotify's over 50% of streaming revenue for indies. So 50% of Spotify payouts go to indies, and more than 50% of streaming revenue for indies is from Spotify. So, it's kind of both sides of the equation. Huge part of the Spotify ecosystem, and Spotify's playing a really, great role for indie artist income as well.
Yeah. What do you think is driving that the most for just the growth for independent music?
Yeah, I think the thing with streaming is fan choice. It's, you know, you think back to the CD era, 2000, 2001. It's mostly American artists, Western European artists who are succeeding, just popular genres. You needed a lot of upfront capital to even endeavor in a music career, right? You need someone to like pay for you to use an expensive studio to literally manufacture and ship CDs all over the world.
Yeah.
And then all the marketing and promotion, this pre-digital marketing was really expensive.
Yeah.
Um,
Producers were getting paid
they were.
big back then.
Yeah, if you made it over that hump,
Yeah.
you were getting paid great. Definitely for
Man,
producers.
I was
For
born in the wrong era.
well, it depends how you think about it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
That's
if
true.
like if you're in the CD era and you made it through all those hurdles, all those gatekeepers, like the going was good, but it was a really small number of
Very
artists.
small.
What you see in streaming is you kind of don't have all those gates, and so uh, indie artists, however they're releasing music, get to reach on Spotify over 600 million listeners in 180 countries overnight, and then fans get to choose. And what you see is like when fans have access to choose, they're discovering new artists, new genres, new types of music, artists who sing in different languages. We have lots of kind of interesting data in Latin Clear about that.
Mm.
Um, and I think that's why you're seeing so much success for artists who are going the indie path, because you kind of have this direct access to fans, follow you on Spotify, come back to your releases. Um, and I think that's a big part of it. That's part of the streaming model.
Right.
And like hopefully for a lot of artists, going with a label is great for them. Uh, works for a ton of artists. A lot of artists are doing really well there. You can get a life-changing advance. You can, get all that support in the team. And for some artists that works. You can go with an indie label and, it could be somewhere in between.
Yeah.
And then there's so many artists making tons of money on Spotify and in streaming, just doing it themselves. Maybe they kind of hire their own team. And the real opportunity here is you have that choice. You can kind of go any of those paths and make, real solid income in music.
Yeah, I guess what I love about Spotify is that you guys have kind of leveled the playing field. And whether you're playing, because I look at them as different games, right? Like
Yeah.
if you're in the major label system, you're likely playing a different type of game than someone who's completely independent,
Yeah.
right? And so you can be playing either game, but Spotify is like the field where everyone is.
That's
Like
right.
that's where everyone's going. And so, there's just as much opportunity on Spotify for the small independent artist as there is for someone who's signed.
That's right.
Right.
Because fans don't care, right?
Right. Fans don't care.
Like fans don't care how you're releasing your music. They just love your music.
Right.
And yeah, streaming like democratizes the playing field like that. Like everyone gets to deliver their music the same.
Yeah.
The majority of artists who are playlisted on Spotify are indie. Half the royalties on Spotify are going to indies. And
Yeah.
so like, great opportunity for people to go the label path, tons of opportunity for people to go indies. And yeah, it's all about that level playing field.
Let's talk about playlisting,
All right.
because there was a point in time, and I remember this, probably earlier in Spotify's history, where if you got playlisted on a
Yeah.
major Spotify editorial playlist, that could be life-changing for you.
Yeah.
Like overnight, people would be aware of your song, who you were. They
Yeah.
maybe follow you on social media because of that. What impact do you think playlisting has in 2025? Is it still as
Yeah.
impactful?
I think so. I think just kind of the role of playlisting has evolved and expanded in different ways. It's a little bit less just hit driven from the biggest flagship playlists.
Right.
Like I think like placement on New Music Friday, today's top hits, Rap Caviar, that still can change a career. But um, I think the focus in a good way has become less just about those, big flagship playlists and more about the whole ecosystem, like hundreds, thousands of playlists where, our Fresh Finds playlist where it's all unsigned artists and all by genre, all different countries. I love Pop Rising. I love Lorem. That's a genreless playlist. So it's kind of this whole web of playlisting where,
Mm-hmm.
way more artists get programming exposure because
Mm-hmm.
there's so many more opportunities. Like the big flagships are nice, but um, for a lot of artists who are getting like sustainable revenue on Spotify, it's coming from this broad network of playlisting and programming, and part of that's editorial. We have a
Mm-hmm.
you got to hear earlier from our head of editorial, and um,
She
uh,
was dope.
yeah, her team's amazing. Like the biggest music nerds you'll
Yeah.
ever meet,
You
and the
have to be
coolest.
if you're like on that
Yeah,
team.
and so they're programming those playlists. When we think about like programming on Spotify, a ton of it's the new personalized experiences too, like our AI DJ, where
Mm.
um, in between a few songs, the DJ interrupts and kind of tells you a bit more about the artist and the backstory. Daylist, if you've used Daylist, where like every 4 or 5 hours you get a brand new daylist based on what you'd like to listen to in that moment
Mm.
on that day of the week. Um, and mixes, radio, Discover Weekly, Release Radar. The whole set of programming is what I think artists are thinking about more and more,
Yeah.
where it's not just about if I get on New Music Friday, my career is made. If I don't, I'm crushed.
Yeah.
It's a little bit more like, all right, I'm doing really well on radio. Uh, DJs introducing me to new artists. Here's the success I got on Release Radar. My followers are getting that every time.
Mm.
I got on a bunch of these Fresh Finds playlists. I got on Pop Rising, and as songs bubble up, you get on bigger and bigger playlists, which is even better.
Yeah.
But I think that's how it's changed. Like,
Yeah.
I think now there's other places where you have these like flash in the pan
Right.
successes where a song can just go from like zero to crazy, and it's not really that sustainable. And I think Spotify playlists used to be a bit like that. Like if you got on one of the big five, great, and people weren't thinking about the rest.
Yeah.
And now it's really about that kind of like bigger picture of the whole ecosystem,
Right. Right.
which I think is ultimately a good thing.
I think that's a good thing. Yeah.
Yeah. What's your experience been? What do you think?
I mean, I think it's still important for if you're like a new kind of unsigned independent artist, I think it is still important for you to be in as many places as you can.
Yeah.
Um, can you share any tips on if I'm a new unsigned independent artist, what's the best way to like get into people's algorithms and
Yeah.
like appear, pop up on these playlists?
Yeah. That's the most common question we get. It's tough. Yeah, believe me, I wish every song could get playlisted.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, there's the easy stuff we always say that sometimes frustrates folks because they know they've like pitched
Yep.
through Spotify for Artists a bunch, and it doesn't always work out because there's so many people pitching and only so many playlists. Um, I'd say, yeah, always pitch through Spotify for Artists at least 7 days before release. Um, do your best to fill in that, you know, short blurb where you can
Hmm.
give a bit more background about the song, the creative process, the
So
promotional
you guys
plan.
actually use that data.
Oh
We're
yeah,
not just like
yeah. I sit with editors all the time. Like they
interesting.
live in that data. Every
Wow.
time they read that pitch before they listen to any song in their kind of playlist review tool, before they listen, they're reading it. It's like right there.
Wow.
Selena, our head of editorial, who you met earlier today, she listens to 3 hours of music every day, no matter what, no matter how many meetings she has, everything else. Her whole team's like that. They're truly reading every pitch. Um,
Okay.
and
Because
so,
I'm always like, when I fill that out, who's reading this?
right,
Like, is this just going to
right.
some robot,
I
like
know it can.
an AI machine at Spotify, just filtering out certain keywords and,
We've
you
had this
know,
idea that on the Spotify for Artists social handles, we should do like a live stream on Instagram one day where we just like show the editors at work, and
yeah.
like we might do that because yeah, it's probably less glamorous than being a music editor sounds.
Right.
They're in our playlisting tool all day. They're reading exactly what artists and their teams are writing in their pitch. they're playing the music, they're sending it around to each other, they're considering it for different playlists that they manage, looking at the data. So that's the big thing. The other thing I'd say is like just playlisting isn't everything. And I think a lot of artists have started to realize that, where sometimes it can feel like if you aren't playlisted, that's it. There's like
Sure.
the majority of streams on Spotify are what we call active streams.
Sure.
Like for people who use Spotify for artists, as an artist, you know this metric because we break down streams from programming, from when listeners are asking for Spotify to recommend music or a third-party playlist curator to recommend music. So like that's all your streams from playlists, radio, mixes, third-party playlists, whatever. Active streams are when listeners are actually seeking you out. They're listening to, from your artist profile, from your album page, from their own liked songs, their own playlist.
Mm.
The majority of streams on Spotify, out of the trillions of streams a year, are active streams. It's
Mm.
fans choosing what to listen to.
Right.
Programming's really important for discovery.
Right.
And programming's important. Part of that's editorial. A lot of that's personalized as well. The majority is active streams. And, the best way to, build that fan base. And a lot of our algorithm, a lot of our editors are data focused. And so I know you give tips to artists all the time about how to promote their work.
Yeah.
All the time, indie artists get that initial momentum themselves, starts to show up in the data, starts to get picked up in the algorithm. And then that's when, playlist editors might notice a brand new artist who hasn't had a hit before, doesn't have a lot of streams before. So I think it really starts with that artist driving those active streams, getting those first listeners yourself.
Right.
I think that's what's great about, I think that's like natural to artists. Artists want to take control of their careers.
Right.
And I think the ones who are succeeding the most aren't just kind of like waiting to see if playlist editors from any streaming service are going to pick them up, and more, they're hustling, they're promoting, they're getting those listeners. And then that's when, Spotify programming on another streaming service can take you to the next level.
Mm.
And yeah, I think that's like the artists who are doing it best right now.
Yeah. Yeah. What was the idea behind? So last year, Spotify announced that they would not be paying out royalties to artists with less than 1,000 streams. Now, obviously, there's a lot of music that goes out
Yeah.
on your platform every single day. What is it up to now? Like 100,000 plus songs or
per day.
sounds?
Yeah.
Yeah, per
Yeah.
day on
Hundreds of millions of
Spotify,
songs. Yeah.
which is like an insane number when you think about a full year.
Yeah.
That's a lot of music. But there were a lot of, kind of smaller, unknown artists that were upset about that policy.
Yeah.
What was the whole idea behind that?
Yeah. You set it up perfectly because when Spotify set up its royalty system, 15 years ago or whenever Spotify was founded, there was a pretty limited number of songs available. There weren't a bunch of distributors, delivering tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands songs a day onto streaming services. And, little inefficiencies, like little kind of parts of the royalty pool. When we were paying out like $1 billion a year in royalties in 2014. We're paying out $10 billion now.
Right.
So,
10x.
things that only impact like under 1% of streams didn't really used to add up. And once you're paying out $10 billion a year, they really do. And you've seen this explosion of so much put onto streaming services. Also, we were trying to get ahead of like explosion of AI tracks, right? Where with AI, someone might just, without even thinking about it, distribute tons of music to a service like Spotify. And the policies really, Spotify makes no money from the policy. It's all about redistributing money within the royalty pool.
Okay.
So the way it works is each song needs to get 1,000 annual streams to participate in the royalty pool.
Mm-hmm.
As you said, there's like hundreds of millions of songs on Spotify now.
Yeah.
0.5% of streams are of songs with under 1,000 streams.
Mm-hmm.
So 10 years ago, 2014, 0.5% of songs of, that's 0.5% of a billion. It's like, small enough. It probably isn't making that material an impact.
Yeah.
Now that's tens of millions of dollars a year. And the problem is, um, those tens of millions of dollars would be getting split up in 2 cent monthly payments. That's
Hmm.
what a song with under 1,000 annual streams generally kind of would earn on average.
Right.
Artists, it doesn't even pass the minimums for most distributors to collect the money. Um,
Mm.
and it also creates a bunch of kind of schemes that we want to avoid, right? Someone uploading 10,000 songs, hoping they can get a few streams on each of them, a few pennies on each, and it adds up. Um, spam tactics like that.
Yeah.
So what we did was say, all right, for those tens of millions of dollars a year, especially getting ahead of the explosion of new music coming, um, should we split that up in 2 cent monthly payments to tens of millions of songs, or should we use that to increase the payments to the other 99.5% of streams? So all the numbers you see on Loud and Clear, artists making 1,000 a year, 10,000 a year, a million a year, they're all higher because of this policy. Everyone's payments went up. Um, and so, level playing field, all songs subject to the same policy. And um, it means once you kind of reach that level, which tens of millions of songs reach that level, 600 million users on Spotify, trillions of streams, getting over 1,000 streams as an initial barrier isn't a high bar.
Hmm.
And we're able to increase the payments for everyone else, protect the platform from spam, make sure the money is actually reaching artists. And that's how we've been thinking about it. But believe me, like the reason I work at Spotify, everyone I know works at Spotify, it's like help artists get paid. That's what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Um, and so I totally get how personal that feels when someone's putting their soul into their music.
Yeah.
They haven't reached that level. Um, and that's tough. And you're thinking about, um,
I think they're
you
kind of
want those.
thinking about it like, I'm a broke, starving artist. I already don't make money off of my music. You're like Spotify's a multi-billion dollar company. You guys are just kicking me while I'm down type of mentality. And so, and I also think part of it is like artists don't really know how the streams are calculated, how the royalties are calculated. Like you explained in the briefing that we had earlier that they're weighted.
Yeah.
So there's not a set royalty rate per stream.
Yeah.
It's just depending on where it's coming from, who's streaming it, that
Yeah.
type of thing. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, that helps explain why, yeah, Spotify makes no money from that 1,000 stream policy because of the way the royalty pool's set up. Um, so for every streaming service, all the major streaming services pay the same way. Um, you have subscribers paying a monthly fee. Some services like Spotify have a free tier where there's music advertising. All the money made from music is put into a monthly pool. Roughly 2/3 of it goes back to rights holders, artists and songwriters, selected rights holders. Um, so yeah, all the streaming services, it's the same. 2/3 of all the money made from music. From there, there's no per stream rate. There's no fixed amount that any service is paying out, because listeners don't pay per stream. It's like if
Mm-hmm.
you were a listener, you're paying the same rate no matter how much music you listen to.
Mm-hmm.
If suddenly you listen to too much music, you have to pay more. That really degrades the streaming
Sure.
experience, gets fewer people to sign up. Every service pays out based on stream share. So stream share basically means if you get 1% of all streams, you get 1% of the royalty pool. Um, and, one of the takeaways we just shared in Loud and Clear is about stream share. It's that in 2024, for the first time, if you're an artist, if you got one in every 1 million streams on Spotify, you generated $10,000 on average.
Mm-hmm.
10 years ago, that would have been $1,000 on average if you had one in a million streams.
Mm-hmm.
And so, uh, when I talk to people about that stat, it kind of just sounds like trivia. You're like, oh, one in a million, $10,000. That's kind of cool. It's like a solid amount of money for one in every 1 million streams. But it's actually like the actual engine of how artists get paid in streaming. Every streaming service has roughly the same music catalog.
Mm-hmm.
Artists always deliver to every streaming service.
Right.
So you've got the same chance at getting 1 in a million streams or 1 in every 100,000 streams or whatever, level of popularity, level of stream share you want. The difference is on Spotify, you get paid the most for that level of popularity. If you get 1 in a million streams on Spotify, it pays more than any other service. And, that calculation, that stream share, that's actually how things get calculated. Is by your percentage of overall streams, not a fixed per stream rate.
Why is it so complicated?
I know. Well,
I mean, like, yeah, like what is like can artists and songwriters just get paid a fixed rate and like make it very simple and transparent for them to understand? I think that's
I
the
know.
thing is like there's not a ton of transparency with
Yeah,
how the system is set up. It's very complex
so
and
complex.
out of the range of understanding for the average musician to even understand,
Yeah,
right?
that's why I get why people talk about per stream rate, because
It's an easy way
it's an
to
easy way
just
to understand it. Yeah, the check you
yeah.
were cut, and you know how many streams you had.
Which, by the way, I'm guilty of.
Right.
Like, I've told people, I only get paid 0.003 cents per
Right,
stream,
right.
right?
And it's like I get why, and like of course you should. That's an easy calculation to do. Why wouldn't people do that? Um, uh, the thing with stream share is consumers love this kind of pay one price, listen to all the music you want experience, right? You compare that to iTunes and digital downloads, where if you're an artist, you want fans listening to as much music as possible. When a fan has to decide if they're going to pay more each time they stream, you're going to listen to a lot less music. You're going to listen only to artists you know. It's a really kind of different consumer experience. So once folks are able to listen to all the music they want each month, a fixed per stream rate, you know, doesn't really make sense, right? If you're paying a certain amount each month, and Spotify, any other streaming service is paying out the rights holder a fixed amount. Once you hit that cap,
Yeah.
you're gonna have to,
The economics don't make sense when
yeah,
you move it to the model that Spotify has, which is you pay monthly
yeah,
and you get access to all the music, all the podcasts in the world. And okay.
yeah, and podcasts, are paid separate. Like, people listening to podcasts doesn't take money from the music royalty pool.
Right.
It's every service is the same. 2/3 of the revenue from music goes into the royalty pool. They pay out by stream share, and yeah, the per stream rate thing's an interesting one because when I'm talking to artists, sometimes the thought experiment we'll do is, you think about what the streaming services would start to do if you were trying to make your per stream rate as high as possible when artists do that calculation. So you envision this streaming service that paid out $1 per stream, and you'd say, like, that sounds incredible, right? So first you start with, like, what will listeners be paying for the service? All streaming services are around, I don't know, $11, $12 a month, and more for a family plan in the US. If a service was paying out $1 per stream, that means the average subscriber is listening to 10 songs a month, right? Otherwise, the service is just losing a ton of money on every subscriber, and that wouldn't sustain.
Right.
So
Right.
if a service has, the listeners tend to listen to, 10 songs a month, you're not going to retain in your subscription.
Yeah.
You're not getting that much value from it if you're only listening 10 times a month. It's probably not that engaging a service. You probably aren't discovering new music. You're probably not telling your friends to sign up. And it doesn't really signal that subscribers are getting much value from it at all. What you want in the streaming model is fans who are really engaged, right? So if instead of 10 songs a month, a service with 100 streams per month, suddenly now that's paying out 10 cents per stream on average, right? The amount people pay is the same. The denominator, you divide it by how many streams each subscriber tends to listen to. The more engaged listeners are, the more big fans you have on a service, the lower the per stream rate is. And the reason Spotify has been able to grow royalties so fast, from 1 billion to 10 billion, more than any other service, 10 billion a year, is cause the service is so engaging. It's like where music fans listen to the most music, they're making the most playlists, they're sharing, they're retaining in Spotify because they love it, they're signing up because they heard from a friend it's really good, they're discovering new artists, going to buy their vinyl, going to their show, supporting them on social. All those amazing things happen because the service is engaging and people listen to a lot of music,
Right.
right? Like the same thing that makes the per stream rate look lower when you calculate it. That's the same reason why Spotify cuts the biggest paycheck, because we have the best product that we'd be able to build the best service around over time. Um, and so, yeah, it's really complicated because no one knows their own stream share. You know your stream count.
Right.
And so it's easy to do that division.
Right.
So what we're trying to do with Loud and Clear is just share all this data so artists can understand better, because it's so complicated. I've been working at Spotify 6 years and I learn new things every day. Um, and yeah, I really feel for artists trying to navigate in this environment.
Yeah, I mean, I always say, I guess it all comes down to convenience, right? Because one thing I always say is convenience helps the consumer, but it hurts the creator. And I think anytime, especially in art, right? Anytime a service is created where it makes art or music or films or TV more accessible, it tends to come at the expense of the creators who created that, right? Because you're making it, it's just the way it is. Like you're
Yeah.
making it to make it available everywhere in the world to anyone who wants to listen at any time. There has to be a cost to that,
But yeah,
right?
but here's the thing. The other side of it's what we were talking about earlier with the success of the indie community in streaming, where you go back 20 years to the CD era where you didn't have that convenience,
Right.
and you know the biggest CD store in the world, and in 2001 was carrying the biggest Tower Records location, had 50,000 CDs on the shelf
Yeah.
from a few thousand artists. All those artists were from North America, Western Europe, the places where they could get discovered, where labels would pour money in it.
Mm.
Um, and then you kind of had to do enough marketing that someone would pay $20 to buy your CD.
True.
And so you didn't have that convenience, you didn't have that access.
Yeah.
And what do we see today? Of the artists who are generating $1 million a year on Spotify, they're performing in 17 different languages. They're
Mm.
from all over the world. We have people making huge amounts of money in all 180 markets that Spotify operates in. Um, the indie community goes from 20 years ago was a way smaller percentage of music revenue going to indies. Now it's 50% of Spotify. That
Mm.
comes from the convenience, right? Like instead of a few thousand artists able to sell CDs, if you get in the club, you're good. Instead, you know, the 100,000th most popular artist on Spotify is generating 6,000 a year.
Yeah.
That was never happening before, and that comes from that convenience, right? That comes from anyone in the world can discover any artist at any moment.
Yeah.
And that's what makes, there's almost 500 million people paying for music subscriptions across all streaming services now. And that's a ton of money coming in. And the reason so many people pay for music is because of how amazing the kind of value prop of these streaming services is, right? The convenience is part of what's amazing. Put any song you want on a playlist. You're not going to have to pay based on how much music you listen to. And so many more artists have gotten discovered that way. And so, yeah,
There's two sides to
there's
the
two
coin.
sides to it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. I always go back and forth on that because I'm like,
I get it.
I love Spotify for making it so easy for any fan or anyone that follows me to listen to my stuff and go stream the music. But on the other hand, it's like it's made it yeah, it's hard to look at that number, right, per stream because we all want to try to measure everything, especially when it comes to like our livelihood. Like this is how we're paying
Yeah.
the bills, right? But there's always kind of that trade-off.
Yeah. I totally agree with you. And believe me, like I'm here talking about how the music industry works today. There's so many things I would change about it
Yeah,
if I could.
me too.
And like, yeah, like with Loud and Clear, with a lot of the education we try to do, it's trying to like be as transparent as we can about the Spotify side of things. It's so challenging being an artist, a creator, a creative person
Mm,
in the online age. And like, I know it's tough with these platforms. So there's so many things I hope continue to get better and better. And, 10 years ago versus now, no, I think streaming's come a long way. Spotify's come a long way. 10 years ago in 2014, after the industry went through
mm,
piracy and
right.
the internet and, you know, the, industry revenue getting cut in half, I get why people are skeptical about this new model.
Yeah.
And 10 years later, we've grown a ton. I hope people stick to see as we kind of continue to improve these numbers over time, because it's amazing growth, and we just kind of want to keep that work going.
Yeah.
We're very much not finished.
Yeah, it is really crazy to think about how much has changed in music over just the last decade.
Yeah.
Over the last 2 decades, it's been like a complete transformation. I mean, I grew up, it's weird because I grew up in the era of Tower Records and
Right.
going to Tower Records to pick up that new Dr. Dre CD, that new Eminem album,
Yeah.
right? Unwrapping it from the plastic shrink wrap, and you could just like smell that new CD smell. And I remember in my car, I had those like CD wallets.
Yeah, like the binder.
Yeah,
where
the
you have
binder.
4 CDs per page.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
loved mine.
remember
Same.
going through my binder of CDs with my
bet.
friends in the neighborhood, like, yo, look at what I have. It was
Yeah.
like a collectible item, right? And now we don't have any of that. It's all kind of digitally cataloged on your phone.
Yeah.
And so, I come from this very particular era of music that's very nostalgic and core to who I am and why I wanted to make music.
Yeah.
But I've had to adapt to like these new platforms and technologies, and
Yeah.
it's been a really crazy journey.
Yeah, 10 years, so much changed in the 10, 20 years. And like, I still collect vinyl. I don't know if you do too. Keep
Yeah.
some of that feeling. But when I think about like the old CD binder I had,
Yeah.
I don't know how many CDs you had. I had maybe like 100,
Yeah.
something like that. And I listen to 100 artists in a week now,
Yes.
right? Like, I'm nostalgic for like the kind of physical side of things. Like, I'm the type, I still buy like physical books instead of a Kindle,
Right.
I still collect vinyl. I love all that stuff. But when I think of, I only listen to artists who I heard about on the radio or I saw on TV. I had 100 CDs I could return to from, I don't know, 70 artists. Now, like, I have 5 or 6 playlists. I'm like, always curating. There's like thousands of artists on all of them at this point.
Yeah.
I put on a playlist. I get exposed to all this new music. So for me, I try to, I'm nostalgic for that too. I love my vinyl collection.
Don't you feel like that made it more special though? Like it made that experience more special to like
more intentional, more
right.
Yeah, there's definitely
Because
something
now
about
we're just inundated with so much content, music, new movie on Netflix, like new show.
Totally.
It's just so much.
I feel
now.
that in my entire life. I feel that all the time, just like trying to keep up with everything. And I think what like I'm seeing happen with a lot of artists now, and I guess with fans, is people are craving that sort of like, that's why concerts are
Yeah.
so popular. That's why in-person listening experiences are happening
I
more.
agree.
That's why like the music videos, having a resurgence, because I think, music's the way you get exposed to artists. It's where you can return to their music, but people still want that special experience.
Yeah.
And I think those things work hand in hand, right? Like when you used to buy CDs, there'd be some way you had to hear about the artist to even know about the CD. And, I was young when this was happening, so I'd be saving up money to be able to afford buying a CD. Now you get access to music whenever you want. You can listen to more genres,
Right.
artists from all over the world you never could have heard before. And then you still can make that intentional choice. When do I buy a ticket to a show?
Right.
When do I buy vinyl? When do I buy CD, a cassette, merch, follow them on Instagram and join live and ask a question in the chat.
Yeah.
Like those special experiences aren't going anywhere. I think of streaming as, right, like where you're discovering artists, where you're returning to the music you love.
Yeah.
That doesn't replace wanting a really close experience with an artist you love. It's just like, taking a different form. And hopefully it's giving more artists the opportunity to find fans who want to invest in those experiences.
Right. Right. I want to give you the opportunity to put this debate to bed.
All right.
Do monthly listeners mean anything? Is that like, please clarify, like if someone has 1 million monthly listeners on Spotify, what does that number mean? Is it significant? Is it not significant? How do you leverage that number? Like,
Yeah.
Talk about that,
Let me put it
please.
this way. Like, monthly listeners, just one number. It's not the be all end all.
But that's the number that people like to go to because it's like most, it's right under the artist name. You see it on their Spotify
Yeah.
profile, and it
I,
can be, like
I know
surprising.
the
Oh,
pressure of the monthly listener count.
yeah,
Yeah, I definitely hear that from artists all the time. Yeah, monthly listener count just means how many listeners in all of Spotify in the last 28 days listen to one of your songs at least once. Um, so, like from a playlist and they never listen to you again, a playlist and they listen to you a bunch, your biggest fan who listens to you 100 times in that month, it all counts as one,
got it.
right? So it's kind of just a measure of reach. If
Right.
you kind of have really broad reach, you have a lot of people who listen to you at least once, great. And obviously, some of the biggest artists in the world with the most passionate fan bases have huge monthly listener counts. That's based on like a real engaged fan base. The truth is, like, not every monthly listener count's created the same.
Right.
What you want as an artist is um, those super listeners, those active listeners who are listening to you a ton. And in Spotify for Artists, um, that's the sort of data we give to, give artists the real sort of feedback loop they should want from their data, not just how many people might be listening to me once, but how many people are listening to me actively, choosing to hear me. What are my streams per listener? You can see streams per listener by song or for your whole catalog. And then you can even see your super listeners, which is how many listeners do you have who are listening to you a ton every month. And so I think the artists who are doing it best are focused on metrics like that. Like, are you developing fans? Do you have people who want to go see you live? Do you have people who are going to be like first in line to listen to your next album when it comes out? And monthly listener doesn't capture that.
Right.
Right. That's just like one piece of the equation. It's just, an easy number that shows how big your reach is. But you really should be thinking about, your fan base.
So it is kind of a vanity metric.
It's a vanity metric. Yeah.
It's like monthly impressions on TikTok or
Exactly.
on Instagram,
Yeah.
right? But that number just goes up and down. It's not a real measure of who your fans are or how many fans you have.
Yeah. That's not the measure of if you're going to be able to like build a career in music or not.
Right.
It's a vanity metric. It's a big number about reach. And, it means something. But definitely it's not what an artist's focus should be on. And yeah, honestly, if you're focused on monthly listeners, it refreshes every 28 days, right? And so like if you're, doing crazy promotion to get as many people to listen at least once, and 28 days later, you're gonna have to do it again. The sustainable way to build your monthly listener count is creating fans who listen to you again and again every month, right?
Right.
That's how you're gonna have like not spikes in monthly listener, but sustained growth
Right.
in monthly listeners. And so if you're thinking long term, you've got to be thinking about fans, not just getting that monthly listener count up.
Right. Fair. Okay. Speaking of vanity metrics, fake streams.
Yeah.
We know they exist. We know people are doing it. The thing that I hate seeing is when a new artist that I'm not familiar with, they're like, "Yo, Kato, check out my music on Spotify. Like, I got 5 million streams on this song." I go check it out.
Yeah.
Song's like all right,
Right.
and they got 5 million streams on one song, but they only have like 100 monthly listeners, and like something is off, right? You can
Yeah.
always tell when something's a little bit off. The numbers don't match up.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts around fake streaming, bot farms, paid
Yeah.
streams?
Yeah. Artificial streaming, as we call it, is like a big focus for our team. And it comes back to what we were talking about earlier about the way the royalty pool works, where, 2/3 of all music revenue from streaming services goes back to rights holders. And if we pay out money for any fake streams, that's money that would have gone to a legit artist who's like building an actual fan base who we want to reward. So that's why we take it so seriously, because any money that goes to people who are buying streams, illegally, that's money that should be going to artists who are, doing it the right way. So we've built out a massive team that's, looking around every corner, catching all the different tactics of artificial streaming people use. And yeah, there's, all different types. There's artists who know that they're buying a shady service because they want the numbers to look higher and, they incorrectly think it's going to help them there. There's some who think they're paying for something legit, because a lot of these services like don't market themselves.
Yeah.
Honestly, they'll act like it's a legit promo service, but actually it's, botted streams. And I hate when artists fall prey to that. And then there's folks, trying to do shady stuff, right? Like release music and get royalties from it. Um, we're catching tons of artificial streams every month. And, it's through all the obvious ways and all the new ways people try to find. Our team finds it.
Yeah.
Every time we kind of detect an artificial stream, we're not paying out royalties for it. We're removing it from public metrics, so
Yeah.
monthly listener count, all-time track stream count. It's not counting towards charts. And then as it starts to be more serious artificial streaming, that's when you might like lose playlisting. You might get a penalty through your distributor. Some of the more kind of serious deterrents that we have to do to show how seriously we're taking it and protecting the royalty pool for artists doing it the right way. But it's tough. I think we've improved our tech a lot the last few years. So, maybe there used to be times where things would stay in public metrics. It really doesn't anymore. Like we're catching tons of artificial streams and removing them. So, when you see your monthly listener count, when you see a track stream count, sometimes it can get confusing because we'll show an all-time track stream count on the platform, but a monthly listener count. So if you see someone with like a ton of track streams, but a low current monthly listener count, sometimes it's just like they had a song that was popular a while ago
True.
and they aren't getting that many more streams.
Yeah.
Um,
But if it
but
was like you dropped the song a month ago and you
yeah,
got
that's
5
weird.
million streams.
That sounds shady.
But by the
Yeah.
way, like this is happening at all levels, no? Like whether you're the biggest artist in the world or the smallest artist in the world, fake streams can be bought by anyone, right?
Yeah.
And it's sometimes hard to tell whether, and maybe you can add some light to this, whether they're weighted the same, but like if you run a campaign, like a paid ad campaign,
Yeah.
and you're just getting a ton of streams in maybe like smaller markets in Southeast Asia or something, right? They're legit.
Yeah.
It's just, they're not from listeners in the US. Is that still considered a fake stream? Like,
But yeah, I think like the guidance I'd give artists are if you can't if you can kind of explain where the streams are coming from, if it's from like a surprising market, and if it seems like it's really sustained, that's a good sign. I think when often like an artist who thinks they're buying a legit service and it turns out to be a shady one, what you'll see is like a huge spike in a weird market that makes no sense. Like you haven't done promo there on your social accounts, you don't see any followers there,
right,
and it spikes up and then it goes away 2 days later.
right.
And you're like, that's weird. Or it's a weird stream source. Like you're not getting new streams anywhere else. It's just from one source. Those are the sorts of signs that something's up. But yeah, like all the time, an artist who's from one country ends up finding a fan base in a totally surprising country.
Yeah.
And if it's sustained and, if you're seeing it not just on a streaming service, but on social, you're seeing listeners pop up from those countries too.
Right.
That's a good sign. So yeah, just because streams are from a surprising country doesn't mean they're fake in any way.
Okay.
You really just want to look at like the trends. Is it sustained? Can I explain why? Am I seeing it on other platforms? And that's probably a better way to, try to figure it out.
Got it. Got it. I wanted to ask you this in the briefing, but I didn't want to spoil the question. With AI.
Yeah.
AI in music was weird when it, kind of started bubbling up for me as a
Yeah.
creative, right? It was just kind of a weird thing where I was like, is AI going to take my job one day? Are they trying to push this on creators? But now we're seeing like fully AI generated songs from platforms like Suno, and a lot of them are really, really good. What is Spotify doing? First of all, what's your stance? Does it have a place on your platform? And if not, like, what are you guys doing to combat that?
Yeah, I know. On the future of AI, your guess is as good as mine, where
Yeah.
it's changing fast. Right now, we're seeing like very, very, very little streaming of like fully AI generated songs. For me, what I'm most excited about is AI as a tool for artists,
Yeah.
right? Like lots of producers are using AI tools in cool ways where they're in control.
Yep.
Um, it can bring the cost down. They can do new things creatively that they couldn't do before.
Yeah.
I love that, right? If it enables new types of music, new sounds we haven't heard before, um, that all sounds great.
Yeah.
Uh, where, you know, I don't want AI to head is replacing artists, replacing producers. Um, and that's how we're thinking about the breakdown. We want to, support artists using AI, producers using AI if they want to, when they're in control.
Right.
They deliver us the final product. We never want AI that's feeling like it's replacing or removing the artist at the center of it.
Yeah.
And so the big areas we're focused on are AI deception and then AI spam. So with deception, it's like a zero tolerance policy. You
Mhm.
can't use, voice clones and deep fakes unauthorized. Pretend you're, train it on an artist's voice, release the music, pretending it's them.
Right.
Um,
We
we
saw that with the whole Drake and Weekend thing.
Yeah, like there's no place for unauthorized voice clones on Spotify. We have a deceptive content policy. It's flagged for us. It's taken down.
So there is like a technology on the back end of Spotify that detects that kind of stuff.
It's like all copyright infringement type stuff. Like you file a claim with us.
Okay. Okay.
So it's covered in our deceptive content policy. So if you're an artist listening and this ever happens to you, through Spotify for Artists, if you just Google it, you'll get to the, submit a
Mm,
claim. It's called deceptive content. We take it down. And I hope at some point there's some like great industry tech that can make that automated.
yeah.
But that's not allowed on Spotify. Uh, AI spam's the other side, right? Where you're using AI to, flood the platform with tons of tracks,
Yeah.
to, try tons of like, different types of metadata where you rename the track names and try to see what takes off. Um, anything that's trying to just spam the platform. But not that AI is creating new types of spam. It's just that AI can do it at a scale like never before, right?
Right.
Um, and so we've invested a lot the last year at getting ahead of AI accelerated spam and making sure it's not getting streams on Spotify, it's not getting royalties. There isn't an incentive for AI spammers to even do it because it's
Mhm.
not going to take off on the platform. So that's how we've been thinking about it. Like no room for deception, impersonation, no room for spam. And then in the middle there, if it's real artists using AI as part of their process, um, we never police how artists and producers make their music, right?
Mhm.
Like you deliver it to Spotify. We don't know if you're using manual tools, synthetic tools,
Right.
whatever, auto tune, who knows?
Right.
We leave that up to the artist. And if you're not spamming us, you're not impersonating, um, I hope that there's some great use cases that help artists and producers do their work even better.
But don't you think it'll get to a point where the technology is so good that you guys won't be able to tell whether it's an AI song or a real artist, right? Because I follow this account on Instagram, and I won't put him on blast because he might take it down.
Yeah.
But I follow this AI music creator
Yeah.
on Instagram, and he makes these like throwback Motown sounding versions of like modern music, and they're so good. Like I wouldn't be able to tell that it wasn't an AI song.
Yeah.
And I've actually sampled some of his AI songs, made them into beats, put them in my beat store, sell them to artists, right?
Yeah.
And so now there's like parts of AI songs that are out there on Spotify. Um, like, so you're saying if he were to just upload his AI songs directly to Spotify, that that would be
Yeah.
against your policy, right?
No, I mean, it sounds like he's a human person creating that music using that tech, and he's not spamming and he's not pretending he's someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like that song's probably not going to get playlisted, but
Mm-hmm.
if fans choose it, if you're loving it, it can exist on Spotify. We don't have any policies against any tech that artists or producers use to
Wow.
make their song,
Yeah.
as long as you're not breaking our rules with it.
Right.
Then yeah, even better, like you taking that and doing something with it and that inspiring your human artistry, that's great. That's even better.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. We need a future where uh, the listener can tell what's human and what's AI. And I hope we have some like good industry standard metadata
Yeah.
soon.
Elon. We need to talk to Elon.
Yeah,
Make it happen.
something like that. Um, and yeah, I definitely I fear that future like you do.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're definitely working from our end to try to make sure kind of transparency's part of the process where artists are delivering music and the credits are letting listeners know what's what.
Yeah. Have you seen? I got to ask you this.
Yeah,
Have you seen the viral Snoop Dogg video of him? He was on some podcast talking
yeah,
about how his music had 1 billion streams
yeah.
and he thinks that his check was less than $45,000.
I have seen that video.
And he was like, how is this possible?
Yeah.
What's your thought? Like, is there a scenario where that is possible?
Uh, yeah, we can break this one down.
Okay. All right.
I love Snoop. I want him to get all the money, as much money as he wants. He
Yeah.
deserves in my book. Yeah, that's an interesting one because it shows how complicated music can be. If you have 1 billion streams on Spotify, we're going to pay out $3 to $5 million for it.
Right.
The range is because it depends what countries the streams are in, and premium listeners, so on. 3 to 5 million. That's well documented. Have you worked on any billion stream songs?
Yeah. Well, I'm getting there.
Good.
I'm getting
Okay.
there.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll circle back when you do. Yeah, the overall payout, it's like 3 to 5 million for 1 billion streams. 80% or so goes to the recording side, 20% or so goes to the publishing side. You probably know the wild world of publishing better than I do, but there's mechanical, there's performance.
Right.
For that song, I think it was Young, Wild, and Free
Mm-hmm.
by Snoop, released with Atlantic, so major label. I don't know Snoop's terms on the recording, but 80% of the 3 to 5 million goes to the recording side. Wiz Khalifa, Bruno Mars were on the track too, so was there an advance someone's recouping? What are the splits there? I couldn't tell you. On the publishing side, that's around 20% of that payout, and on that song there's 13 songwriters. And so I don't know if there's samples, I don't know what else, but there's 13 writers on that song. And so when I was doing some in the back of the napkin, I think maybe Snoop was talking about just the mechanical royalties that he might have gotten from that one song. And so yeah, basically, it's a good example of if you're DIY artist, things are pretty simple. If you own 100% of your music and
Right.
you write and produce it yourself,
Right.
if you have there are billion stream songs that are fully independent, that person's getting the full 3 to 5 million. Once you're signing label deals, sometimes it's great terms, right? Like maybe you get a life-changing advance and that's awesome, but you're just not going to earn as much back
In royalties.
in royalties. And so that's where Snoop knows his own terms. He owns his own record label now, so I hope he's making even more.
Yeah.
I want Snoop getting all the money he wants.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what happens. That's like $3 to $5 million for 1 billion streams. And from there, it's like how many writers you have, what's your label deal, all those
Right.
things. And
The pie
I
gets
think,
split up.
yeah, it's a good example of how confusing the music industry is because we do this loud and clear report where we're like, here's all the data we have on our side. No other streaming service is publishing any data. We, have no idea how many artists are generating different amounts on any other streaming service. And then from the label and distributor side, a lot of the deal terms are opaque. Folks don't know how much money is making it to the artist and songwriter. And people ask us sometimes, they'll be like, okay, so how much is this person making? It's like, we don't know. We know how much they pay out.
Right.
If they're on a DIY distributor, we can probably guess they're keeping 100% of it.
Yeah.
But, that's where I hope the industry gets even more transparency.
Yeah.
Because, that's when artists feel empowered to understand, here's the revenue opportunity on each service. Here's what each deal means. If I go major, it means this. If I go indie, it means this. If I do it myself, it means that. Like, I have to be this popular to earn these amounts. That's what we want. That's why we've been doing 5 loud and clear reports every year.
Yeah.
So I hope we just start to see the whole industry start to do stuff like that.
Yeah. No, me too. And he did say he went even a step further after that and said that he was leaving Spotify altogether to go with some blockchain music service.
Yeah.
Are you concerned about that being the future of music discovery and how people are consuming music on the blockchain versus on Spotify?
Yeah, Snoop's music's all still on Spotify, and Snoop's super popular on Spotify. He's making a lot of money, especially now that he has his own label too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I never blame him for playing around.
Yeah.
And that soundbite got some good press for him and the company he partnered with. And I think that's great. I have no problem with anything Snoop does to get his music out there and make more from it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting, man. I mean, I know you got to go. We're kind of at the 1 hour mark
Oh,
now.
time flies. Yeah.
I know, but I really appreciate you just like sitting down and being transparent. I wish my hope and wish is that all streaming platforms start to become more transparent about what's going on behind the scenes, because
Yeah.
I think as artists and songwriters and creators, like we always suspect the worst.
Yeah.
We always think that there's funny business going on at labels, at streaming platforms, at these social media companies. And we have to rely on so many of these tools and platforms to have a career,
Yeah.
right? And so I just appreciate the fact that you guys are being at least transparent about it. I don't think any other streaming platforms do like a loud and clear report, right? You
No, they
guys are the
don't.
only ones.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I appreciate that. And honestly, kudos to you for the work you're doing to educate artists and songwriters and producers.
Thank
Because,
you.
yeah, I see all your videos and it's like really high quality, accurate
Thank you.
content for folks. And that's such a big kind of part of the ecosystem because we can do all of our like corporate reports. There's
Yeah.
like a limit to how much people want to hear from a company, whatever company it
Yeah.
is. It's like people like you who are actually taking that information, making it accessible to the
Yeah.
community. And like it's so hard being a creative person in
Yeah.
2025. And so yeah, thank you for doing that.
No, but to y'all's credit, like you did not tell me to ask any of these questions. I literally
You can ask whatever you want. Yeah.
I asked whatever question that I had, and you took the time and sat here and answered them. So
Of course, anytime. We
that
did
was
it.
perfect.
That was fun.
Thanks, man.